please give a warm hand to Mattias so he feels that he's welcome here. Yeah, his first time in Flemingsberg.
First time in Flemingsberg, at least at this breakfast, right? So thank you very much, Natasha, very, very kind of you. So my name is Mattias Gäreskog. I work at Business Sweden, leading the life science sector at Business Sweden. And prior to that, I have a PhD in medical cell biology from Uppsala, and then been working actually 18 years in company leading commercial roles within biotech and medtech. But now I'm very happy to be at Business Sweden because we have the opportunity to help all of you guys, all the companies of Sweden, to help you in the best way to grow your international sales. So I usually, when I have presentations like this, I always ask a couple of questions. And I should do that to you as well. So how many here knows about Business Sweden? Raise your hand. Okay. Not everyone, but quite a few. So, and how many of you knows what Business Sweden are doing? Even fewer. And that is exactly what we also experience. When I started at Business Sweden, we launched a survey. So we asked people those two questions. And 86% knew about Business Sweden, but only 38% knew what we were doing. And that is quite bad. So for me, I'm very happy to be here to present what we are doing and how we can help you. And hopefully afterwards, all of you will know who we are and what we do, and you will tell your friends. So, Business Sweden. In broad general sense, we help Swedish companies to grow global sales, internationalizing. And also, we are looking to international companies to invest in Sweden and expand and establish their operations in Sweden. So those are the two main things, with the highest goal to create more jobs and increased growth for Sweden. And this is because we have quite a unique ownership. So 50% of our ownership is the private business sector, represented of the Swedish Foreign Trade Association, if you know what that is. I didn't know it before I started here, but there is an association that is representing the private business sector. And then the other 50% we are owned by the state, represented of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we are semi-state organization, and this means that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs more or less dictate what we are going to work with and what kind of sectors we are going to work with. And those sectors are the ones that are very important for Sweden. So you can see here that we are working with transport, energy, that is Northvolt, for instance. We worked with two persons worked a whole year to the after sales of Northvolt. We are also working with dig tech, consumer goods, and that includes beauty and fashion, and also like Swedish candy. So recently we helped Bubs. So they have introduced their candy in Japan. It's very popular in Japan. You know, this hallon lakritsskalle and those kind of very delicious candy. And they also opened actually a store in the city of Stockholm. If you haven't seen it, it's only hallon lakritsskalle and things like that. And then unfortunately, defense has increased quite rapidly, the priority for defense companies and products in Sweden. But the most important one, of course, you were looking for that one, life science. I think it's the most important sector. It's not only jobs and growth, it's also, facilitating and introducing new therapies and new drugs for us to be more healthy and live longer. So I'm very happy to be leading the life science unit and working with life science companies. So it's important for our Swedish companies to reach out in the world and sell to global markets. And therefore, I'm very happy also that Business Sweden have about 55 offices out in the world. So it's not only me or my colleagues sitting in Stockholm and killgissar about certain things, how things are in the world. So if a company are interested in US or Australia or Africa or Brazil, we have people on the ground in these countries, living there and knows the climate and everything. So what we usually do is, of course, to connect our companies with our offices in those countries, so they get help on the ground, the local expertise. So that's really good, and I think that is also quite unique if you compare to other support systems that we can benefit from here in Sweden, especially on the universities. So basically, we work with 4 pillars to help Swedish companies. And the first one is the export promotion. And that is what I said in the beginning, to help Swedish companies to grow global sales abroad. And how do we do that? Well, we have a lot of different services for doing that. And most of them are in this, I don't know what I should say, is it light blue? Those cluster of the blue boxes over there. It's about market prioritization and market entry and those kinds of questions. That is really important when you have moved your company through the innovation hubs and acceleration systems and you are looking to go abroad. We have workshops, both can be in groups or also individual, where we help these companies to understand what market is the most suitable for you, and have facts for that, making different export canvas and business cases. And also, when you in this workshop has understood then what kind of market you're interested in, we do market validations where you get in contact with the office in that market that can help you with specific questions. And this is free of charge for SMEs. So not everyone knows about that there are a lot of help you can get from Business Sweden free of charge. And then, of course, we have also other, the white boxes. If you would like to dig deeper, you need to invest some money, and it's 50% subsidized by the government. So, for instance, if you are looking to, I would like to know the distributor network in Brazil. So then you can get it for free from our office in Brazil. These are the distributors that you can contact yourself. But if you would like more help, then it becomes an export project, and then we can help you to analyze the distributors, which is the one most suitable for you, book the meetings, and be in the meetings together with you and things like that. So that's great. And then we have, of course, delegations and events that I will mention a little bit more later on, that you can join as a company to get in touch with different partners or investors. And sometimes it's in a conference, and sometimes it's a delegation, for instance, with the Crown Princess and the ministers, for instance, for foreign affairs, etc. So that is a lot of different things that we can help Swedish companies for export promotion. And then another pillar of progress is the business support services. And this is really when you have done all the export promotion, you know where to go, and you say, well, we would like to expand in the US, which is very common, of course, for life science companies. Then it can be a lot of problems, hiring people, employment. We would like to have an address before we are moving there. We would like to have, an establishment of an office. And then we can help with those services as well. So Business Sweden in the US, for instance, can be your CFO, can be your HR, to help you with employment and pay salaries and everything. You can get a virtual address at our office, and you can also rent a desk in our office if you would like to work on a market maybe for 3 months. Then you can have a chair in our office to work from there. So there is a lot of great services that we can offer to run a company abroad. The next pillar, advisory services. I think I'm a little bit ahead in my computer. Yeah, the next one is advisory services. And we have a team in Stockholm that you can see on the left-hand side that offers a lot of free advice on quite tricky questions. So you can call them, or you can email them, or even visit us if you have questions regarding custom procedures and tariffs, which is really, a big problem these days that we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But also if you have problems or questions regarding e-commerce, Linda is really good at e-commerce, but also delivery terms or compliance and things like that. So that is something that you really should take advantage of if you have questions around this. They could also, if needed, but then I think they take out some fee if you would like to have them come to your company and have some kind of training at your company. And then they are also publishing different publications that is good to and handy, which also I think you need to pay a small sum to get access to. So that's great. And then the last pillar that I would like to talk about is the investment promotion. So the other things are more to help Swedish companies to move abroad. The investment promotion is more to get money in companies into Sweden to make more jobs and increase growth. And typically within life science, capital investments is something we are looking for all the time. And it has been really hard on the investment side, especially for life science the last years, and also over a long time period. So the research and development activities investments in Europe, for instance, compared to US, the investment gap between those two, US and Europe, has increased 1,000% the last 20 years. And then if you're looking into the venture capital to unnotified companies in Sweden, only in 2024, of all that money that flew into Sweden, life science got 0.7%. So it's crazy because life science, we need a lot of money to get all our ideas to market. And you can also see it when you're looking at the pipeline of Sweden of clinical trials that we have. Since we are the second most innovative country in the world, actually, we have a lot of projects in discovery and in preclinical, and it flows over to phase 1 and 2. But then in phase 3, when it gets scale up, it gets costly, then we drop in trials a lot. So either you go bankrupt or you are sold to abroad. So we need a lot of money, and we are looking to attract those money all over the world within life science in my team. And we can see some good things on that side now, even if it's a lot of turbulence in the world. So maybe you've seen that Verigraft, they got 110 million recently, and that is from a Korean investor that we've been working with. And it will also be actually announced maybe in a week or two, another big investment in a Swedish company from this Korean investor. So we get a lot of interest from Korea and Japan, especially also, not only US. Some people these days, they're a little bit like, do we want money from the US? Yes, of course we want, but there are some consideration these days actually when thinking about that. So we are looking a lot into capital investments. Of course, clinical trials, really important for the government as well, to make the climate in Sweden for clinical trials much better. And the government has launched the SWE trial initiative, maybe you've heard of. It's located within the Swedish Medical Agency. So they just started now with a team, and we at Business Sweden will help them to get abroad, at least to start with in Europe. So we will have an embassy tour in Europe together with SWE trial, where we invite C-level pharma companies for a dinner where we present Sweden's climate and how good it will be and how good it could be right now. So that's clinical trials, and also collaborations between different academic universities and alliances. And then of course, establishments and expansions is something that we also think is very attractive. And that is when we get maybe pharma production into Sweden, because that's a lot of job that we create when we are attracting those biopharma production, for instance, or also R&D centers. So that is the investment side. So besides that, we are trying to get investors into Sweden and to the Swedish companies. We also try then, of course, to connect the Swedish companies, especially the SMEs, then with investors in different ways. And sometimes, investors call us and they say, what kind of nice Swedish companies do you have? And we send them lists and a lot of companies, and then they come back to us. Well, we think these 4 is very interesting. Actually, last week, there was this American investor that was interested in 9 Swedish companies. So then we are setting up meetings together with these companies and the investor to see if some kind of collaborations or investments can be made. But also then we go to different conferences or arrange different events for you. So one that we went to was JP Morgan. I know that Sprint was there, but I don't think in our pavilion maybe, or in our event, but at least we had a Swedish breakfast that was really appreciated. I think we were 150 persons at the breakfast, and the Swedish companies pitched their ideas, and we had NVIDIA and Gilead there speaking, and it was 150 persons in the breakfast, and there were 500 persons on the wait list. So the interest globally for Swedish companies and Swedish innovation is really big. So that's great. So a lot of very interesting meetings at JP Morgan. In late April, we will go to Japan and Korea together with Swedish companies, where we will have market entry day. We're visiting universities and hospitals, and then we will have one-to-one meetings with investors in Japan. And the companies that join us will also pitch from stage. And we're very happy also to have the Nobel Prize winner and the Japanese Nobel Prize winner as keynote speaker at that event. And then when Japan is done, we fly over to Korea, and then we also have one-to-one investor meetings in Korea with Korean investors and join BioKorea. So that is one example where you could join. And then we have a pavilion at Bio International in June, where we also will have Swedish companies to join one of the biggest life science conferences in the world. And then in November, we have the Swiss Nordic Bio, where we also have one-to-one meetings with, Switzerland and the European investors together with Swedish companies. So there are a lot of opportunities to join if you're interested to get money. But also, I think it's really important, and what we have learned, to start building investor relations. Because it's very hard for you, when you need money, to just go to an event and then think you should get it. You need to cultivate your relations with investors early, before you need money actually, to be able to have that relations for years. So because they will follow you and look at you, and you have the possibility to convince them that this is a really good company to invest in. So it could be really good to join something like this, just to build the relations for coming years when you really need the money. Okay, so what is the problem with the investments? Why don't we get that much investments that we had maybe during the pandemic or before the pandemic? Well, if we then should look a little bit at the global economic outlook. So there is something that is investment's worst enemy, and that is uncertainty. So when there is an uncertainty in global trade, investments tend to stay low. They are really picky. They have the money. The money exists, but they're really picky, and they're waiting, to see what's happening, trying to predict. And right now, it's impossible to predict what is happening in global trade. So this is a chart where we have followed actually the uncertainty in global trade since in this picture, it's 1960, and you can see it's quite stable over here. You can see like 73, there was actually an oil crisis where the Middle East decided to block oil to the Western countries, and that was a crisis. You can see a spike around there, 73. But quite fairly on a low level. And then something happened over here. You can see like 2016 over there, and it gets really high spikes. So what happened at that time? Well, it was the first time Trump became president. Then everything went really uncertain. And then it actually became pretty good over some years. And now it's enormously increased, and that was the second time that Trump became president. So there is a connection here which is unheard of for many, many years. And you can see that this is December numbers, and we will see the next time we get this picture, but I would say it has increased again, right? Because there is things happening and with the Supreme Court and everything. So what is this about? Yes, you know about this. There is Mr. Trump here in the White House. He uses tariffs as something bully tool in some sense. So you can see he started this on Liberation Day there in March, April, and the tariffs increased, and you can see that China really got really high tariffs, and then it lowered a little bit, and then it was quite stable for a while. And you can see that Sweden is down here, and the global situation. But these are a little bit old numbers, right? Because it's old, yesterday is old, because something happens all the time, right? So you know about this. This was when we heard about, well, he was making these things about Greenland. And it said, all of you that don't like that I'm taking Greenland, you will have increased tariffs. So we were at that stage here. Maybe Sweden will have really high tariffs because we stand up for Denmark and Greenland. But now you know that the Supreme Court said these tariffs are illegal. So for a short while over here, we had 0 tariffs, a few hours at least, before Trump then increased with threatening with 15% through another kind of system, bypassing the Congress. It's now 10%. So if we are looking at kind of the threats and what the actual tariffs are, we can see the black line. There has been a lot of threats about very, very high tariffs, but the actual tariffs have been quite a lot lower. And today, after the Supreme Court and the new taxes, this is about 13%, so now it's about 10%. So it's even a little bit lower right now. And who knows what's happened, because Trump has also, of course, threatened he are able to increase it to 15% actually. So that is, of course, very disturbing and is making a turbulence on the market. So why is Trump doing this? So the main reason for this is the US trade deficit. So if we look at these numbers, they have a really high trade deficit, which means that they are importing much more than they are exporting. So you can see that the deficit is 1.205 USD billion. So it's quite a big number over here. And then Trump is looking at this, and then he looks to the left to see, 75% of the total US trade deficit is from China, the EU, the Southeast Asian nations, and Mexico. So this is the reason that he wanted to do something about this, to decrease those deficits. And you can say that he succeeded somewhat, because when we looked at this in October, although maybe when we see the numbers for the full year, maybe it hasn't, decreased, but to October he has actually decreased it about 150, 200 billion USD. So we have succeeded to some extent, and the main reason for this is China. So you can see that China in that picture is minus 153 USD billion, and in the previous they were 271. So the deficit from China has really decreased a lot due to these tariffs. However, if you look at the Southeast Asian countries, they have increased. So there are also examples of rerouting the trade through other countries. And if you look at the percentage of those 4 big ones, it was 75 of total deficit, and now it's 73. So not so much, but of course quite big numbers that will make something out of it. So that's the big reason for all these tariffs, and that Trump thinks it's unfair. And then we think that he is a bully, but what can we do, for instance, in EU or China? Well, you could give, increased tariffs for the US, like you say, tit for tat, and that is much what has been done. The Europe, the EU also have something called the trade bazooka, which is more or less that they can close off Europe for different countries for the total sales, which is a really powerful tool that you maybe don't want to use, but it's some kind of power situation to have that in mind. And then there is a third thing. Maybe you've heard about government bonds. So this is really a tool where the US borrows money from international countries. They are selling government bonds, and there is quite a lot of foreign holders of those bonds. You can see the total here is in the blue line, and at this time the yellow line are the countries in Europe that were supporting Denmark and Greenland. So that was interesting to look at how much of the government bonds do those countries own, and then we have China in below. And so this is something that is very powerful and something that Trump's listen to. Because if these countries decide to sell off government bonds, it will push the prices downwards, and the interest rates will increase, and there will be a really tricky situation for US to borrow new money from abroad. So this is something that Trump is really cautious about. So if you want to put pressure on him, you can threaten a little bit about selling off these bonds that China's already done for a long time. And the biggest holder of bonds in the world today is Japan. So they have a really good leverage. And if you read between the notes in the news, you can see sometimes that when Japan is in need of something, then US all of a sudden supports this in some cases. And that is because they are afraid of Japan selling off the bonds. So that is something that a little bit deep dive into what's happening in that economy. So, but on a global scale, economic growth will actually hit its lowest point this year, because we are trying to stabilize to the situation in the world. 2025 was quite a good year. It was better than we expected when we were closing the year, with a global GDP growth of 2.9. So now it will be a little bit lower this year in total or in the world, and then it will increase with 27 and further on. So the things that we experience now in the world is the lowest. Now it can only be better. So that's kind of nice. But then, of course, it's very different on different parts of the world, and you can see the coloring scheme here. The yellow color is the countries that have a really high GDP growth this year, and the color of black is the ones that are really, really low, which is mainly Russia. So India is going really well right now, but also if we look specifically into Sweden, so the numbers for Sweden is looking very good this year, and we have a high domestic interest of our products, and also in Europe and abroad. And these tariffs, it has more or less just meant higher prices for the consumers in the US, because the Swedish companies have adjusted the price level a little bit, and the consumers in the US have paid for it. As long as we have them on this level. If we would increase the tariffs more, it would be more of a problem for Swedish companies. I think the Swedish companies during the last year has been more problematic with the currency than the tariffs, to be honest. And the last picture here is just to show you something that we are looking at very carefully also. It's the Export Managers Index that we are looking at in Business Sweden. We are talking to all the Swedish companies, the exporting companies, and then they get basically two questions. What do you think about the current situation for your export? And what do you think about the future? And if it's below 50, then they have a negative or kind of cautious feeling about the situation. And if it's above, they have a positive view on what's coming. So the last time we measured this, the exporting companies, they have a cautious view on how the situation is right now, naturally, but they also believe, as you can see, 52.9, that it will be a bright future ahead. So, yeah, thank you very much.